Hello, everyone. Yeah, it was a very, very special and confusing day today because I thought the talk would be tomorrow. I do this all between three conferences, and I was pretty sure it was tomorrow speaking here. And then I had a call. Where are you? I'm at the restaurant. Of course, yeah, I have a free day, but I'm here today. I skipped the dinner. I just ate a starter, and I managed that I was here as soon as possible. So welcome to my talk on blazing accessibility basics here at .NET Sheffield. So let's start with an intro. And in the intro, we start with the content and just show you and tell you what we are going to see today and what we are going to talk about. We start with what is accessibility and inclusion. Then we are going to talk about the POUR principles. And maybe the name POUR or the acronym POUR does already think about it. It means perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. The reason I think maybe you didn't already know, because the next chapters are perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust Blazor apps. And then finally, it's time to thank you for waiting on me and to watching my talk. I have some time for questions, and I try to provide some answers too. So I'm Dennie Declercq, and I'm president, IT coach, and developer at DDSoft. DDSoft is a non-profit in Belgium, and we connect the IT field, the IT industry, with the social industry. And since the beginning that DDSoft was founded, we had a very strong focus and passion on accessibility, making systems, making apps or websites accessible for people with the most needs, like people with disabilities. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I'm very, very happy that I achieved it. And I'm inventor of the hashtag Dreaming is Believing. And Dreaming is Believing was all about making my speaker dreams coming true. I really wanted to travel the world as a speaker. And now I am doing, and I'm very happy that I can say that. So what is accessibility and inclusion? And first saying, what is accessibility? And accessibility is all about people with all needs, that are their normal and their special needs, can access the internet, but also daily life activities. In fact, they can access all areas. And in times of COVID, it's even more important to stress that not being able to use the internet or not being able to use smartphone apps can nearly this time also exclude people in the daily life. I give you two examples. The first one, if local governments put on an internet website what's allowed or not in certain special times like the COVID crisis, but people with disabilities cannot read this information, and maybe there's a night clock, so a curfew, I think it's called in English, and they don't know, they can even be arrested, because not all people with disabilities are living in an institution and their caregivers are doing everything for them. Also, what if there is a Corona Pass app, for example, a QR code with the app if you are vaccinated or have your test, but you can't use a mobile device? Maybe you have a learning disability and you can't use a mobile device. Aren't you allowed anywhere? So it's more important than ever to touch on accessibility. I'm starting really focused on accessibility since 2012 already, and then in another organization, Ithaca, and I continue to talk with everything in my nonprofit. But in that times, not being able to access the digital world was one thing. At this time, not being able to access the digital world leads to not being able to access the real world, and it's even worse. And I'm going to talk about two methodologies of inclusion and accessibility. And the first one, I'm going to talk about Microsoft inclusive design. because Blazor is a Microsoft language, a language technology, and I'm a Microsoft MVP. I really love their vision too. And inclusive design is a methodology born out of digital environments that enables and draws on the full range of human diversity. Most importantly, this means including and learning from people with a range of perspectives. And they say it in the next way: recognize exclusion, solve for one, extend to many, and learn from diversity. I will share you the slides later on if you, I'm going to show you them on a GitHub repo. A GitHub repo with the slides and also some source code. And there, then you have the link to the full document of the Microsoft Inclusive Design Guidelines. One thing that they really are using and I really love is they built on the persona spectrum. And they said you have categories that you can do or can't do. The categories are touch, see, hear, and speak. And then each disability at that time can be permanent, temporary, or situational. For example, speaking can be a difficulty for someone who is nonverbal, but also for someone with a heavy accent, for example, and even especially if you need to speak another language and you have a heavy accent. Not being able to see it for somebody is blind, but also some people having the cataract disease, a lot of people getting older having the cataract disease, but also just a distracted driver. I'm not saying you should use my mobile apps when driving the car, but maybe sometimes in times of emergency, people do. And I also, because Blazor is about websites or web apps, I want to touch also the WCAG. These are the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And this developed through the V3C process in cooperation with individuals and organizations around the world, with the goal of providing a single shared standard for web content accessibility that meets the needs of the individuals, organizations, governments internationally. And as you said before, they work with the 4 principles. And the rest of the talks are going to deep deeper because we are going to try to meet the standard, or we're going to meet the standards with the 4 principles. Again, here is a link for additional information about the WCAG. I also want to touch how we can test the applications. How can you build accessible websites in Blazor or in whatever technology if you don't test them for accessibility? And we all used to test our code. Who is not testing their code? Nobody. Maybe I just write if the audience is really awake. Who tests his code? Yeah, okay, most of you. And who tests the code or the UI on accessibility at this time? Oh my God, there are already people doing a good job. Most of the time, testing for accessibility is a thing that too many people forgot, but I'm happy to see that there are some hands testing for accessibility. And who is doing it at this time already with the Microsoft Accessibility Insights? Okay, they are good. But because I didn't see all the hands, I give you a demo of the Microsoft Accessibility Insights. So here is an application that I'm going to show you how to build it today. And it's all about me. I just built an application about me, about DD as a speaker, about my speaker career, because I like to demo things with stuff that really matters to me, and I really am loving of the speaking. So I'm going to go to the Microsoft Accessibility Insights here. It's a plugin that you can install for Chrome, but also for Microsoft Edge, of course, with the new Edge, since it's Chromium-based. So I'm going to open the Microsoft Accessibility Insights for Web. And we're going to start with the FastPass. And I have 0 failed instances. It should be bad, honestly, if you give a demo with already a lot of failed instances. And we're going to I'm going to show you one more. You can also test for tab stops. I can toggle the visual helper. And what's going to happen now, you see here this arrow. The circle is where my tab stop going to be. So follow the pink circle, please. So he's going to home. He's going to talks to comments. He's going to the browser. And then he's going to go to all the tabs in my browser if I press the tabs. And then he's going to go to the main menu again. And now when we are on talks, at the menu, so we press a lot, but of course in two tabs we are already here. We did just an extra way to show everything. Then you see again, here it's opening the new tab. And here is a list of my talks. Okay. Way too much. No, happy with that. So also here we can open the accessibility checker. We can open the FastPass. And again here, 0 failed instances. So that is the Microsoft Accessibility Insights for web. Microsoft Accessibility Insights also exists for Windows. And there is an Accessibility Insights GitHub action. So for everything in GitHub, in your CI/CD. Okay. And just to let you know, I'm working on a talk, some talks about completely on Microsoft Accessibility Insights, with all the special things about it. Because right now we only did a FastPass to test this, because you can test already a lot with the FastPass. And this talk is about Blazor, and we are already more than 10 minutes talking without Blazor, so I'm going to continue that. We can start with Blazor. And this, since from here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the core principles. So this is from the WCAG standard. And the next chapter is the P, so the perceivable, the operable, the understandable, and the robust, directly implementing with the Blazor websites. So perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. What does this mean? Perceivable. Can everyone access the content on the website? Operable. Can everyone operate the website? Understandable. Can everyone understand the content on the website? Robust. Is the website robust? Is everything working well and fluid? And I don't know how it is for English-speaking folks, because all the standards are made, I think, from American, so the American standards from the US. I'm not a native English speaker, and for me, the difference between perceivable and understandable makes a lot of sense. It's not that it doesn't make any sense, but it can be clearer, so I have my own statement. While perceivable means that everyone can access the content with different tools, like screen readers or additional input devices, understandable means that everyone should be able to understand the content. So there's a difference between accessing the content and understanding. Give me an example. If you have an image and you are blind, or with vision loss, I have an image on the website and there's no alt text, then the screen reader wouldn't reload anything. So it's not perceivable. You cannot access what is about the image on the website. But what if you have an alt text, but the alt text is a very, very vague or with a lot of jargon. Then you can perceive it, you can get the info, but then you cannot understand it. So then it's perceivable, but not understandable. Talking about perceivable, we're going to add it right now in Blazor. First of all, a question to you all, folks. Has all of you already worked with Blazor in the past? Before? So there are a lot of people new to Blazor. Okay. So I need to start with showing a quick tour about Blazor. Additional, is there any one of you who didn't see any conference or user group talk about Blazor, so have no idea what Blazor is? Okay, there's no hands. So at least you have some basics about Blazor. That's good. So you should see the residual. So here we have our solution, Declercq. We have our model. A model has some things. Our model has an event. So it's just a simple C# data model with some data annotations. So for the validation, we work with the data annotation. So what you put here on required, or if you put maximum tags on or a minimum, that will go into the validation that we'll see later on the forum. And you have a talk. So in the talk is already built in to have the alt text for the first slide URI. So the first slide is in the model the picture of the slide of the talk. And here I added also the alt text, so just a C# model. And we also have comments. That's the page that I didn't show yet for a surprise, but you already see there are also a lot of data annotations here. And then we have here, we don't need the functions. We have our services. It's just really simple C# that you have here your so here are the implementations, and then we have here our services. Okay, our services are in the function is going to get it. So here, I says everything just hard-coded. I just did everything hard-coded. I don't have a connections to the real database yet, because I'm first working with UI, with user interface. Then we have our components. In the component, so we start with the pages. We have our index page. And Blazor is with the Blazor syntax that is combining so HTML with the typical Blazor, so C# in the same page. For example, here you have in my talks. Here is not a lot of C# because I work with components. In Blazor, you can also split everything into components, and that is really a best practice. So if you look here to on my page talks, you have my talk list. And my talk list here, that is a component. So in components, you have talk list. And here you see directly what I mean with a kind of C#. So Blazor mix it with HTML. So here, if I don't have talks, you give the error no talks found. Otherwise, you do a for each talk. And then you have the talk list item. So here you have the talk list item.Blazor. Again, and here then you have more information about the talk. Blazor works, so if you start a Blazor component, so if you Blazor project, you have Blazor server side and Blazor client side. There are differences. Blazor server side is hosted on a server, on Azure, for example, and it has to be a .NET server. With .NET Core, it also can be a Linux server, sorry. But it has to be a server. If you do it client side, there's no server needed. It's all running in the browser via WebAssembly. There are differences what you can do on server side versus WebAssembly. For example, some classes in the framework you can't call via WebAssembly. Also for security, if you do a lot of connection to the database, or you need to have a very good system with key vault and a good key system, otherwise it's way more important on client side because you can't see the code directly. Server side, you have a bit more way to working out. But the most important thing is that you cannot do everything. By example, I am also going to experiment further with Blazor, and I have a solution that you combine Blazor application together with some Microsoft Cognitive Services, and for that solution you just need, for that specific solution with speech, you need to be hosting it on server side. So if you start the Blazor solution, it always asks you client side or server side. And you also always have a program.cs and an app.razor. And then you start with the index.razor. If you start with the Blazor solution, you have a template. It's also always created the same template. It's based on Bootstrap, but already templated from Microsoft. I changed this to a real website UI with a specific website template with a specific website, because it's also very important for accessibility. I find a website is a website and an app is an app, and even Blazor websites are in fact web apps, but for the end user they don't always know. By example, I'm going to stop the solution, and I'm going to make a new solution. And you will see, then you also, for people who are new to Blazor, you will see what I mean. I'm going to close the solution here, and I'm going to make a new solution. So create a new project. So Blazor WebAssembly app. We do Blazor server to make. It doesn't matter. No, I do Blazor WebAssembly because for what I'm going to show, it doesn't matter. So Blazor WebAssembly. So you have the choice between both. I click next. And I just make it. Now you will see that the basic Blazor template is really a PWA template. And I'm not saying that it's bad, and I think most of you will at least adjust it or well template it. But what you will see a really important thing, the menu bar is on the left and not at the top. And as explaining that most people using your web application or people with disabilities don't know or don't have to know that there's a web application, so not the complete website. And for that reason, I really love to style my CSS file as a real website. So here you see the menu bar at the left in the new template. How did I change this? I just changed it in the CSS. So in my solution, so it's WebAssembly. In my www root, you have your CSS, and I replaced site CSS with the dsoft CSS, and that make the style and the top bar so at the top. So there's a very fast introduction to Blazor because, and of course, if you want to start that Blazor applications were accessible, you need to know something more about Blazor. But to be sure, I definitely, if you want to go into Blazor, I really advise you to start with a Blazor course, but it's not that difficult. If you know C# and if you did some web development in the past, especially model view controller work, it's really not that difficult. So we're going to make it perceivable. And we're going to add text alternatives for non-text. So, and I split it up in the HTML part and what you should include in your Blazor, so in your C# or in your Razor view model. So provide alt text for images, but if you want to provide alt text for images, maybe it's needed, or most of the time it's needed, to include also alt descriptions in your models. You will see one example in the same page that I don't use it in the model, but it is in my view, and you will see how. Content can be presented in different ways. For that, it's really important that you use the latest and greatest HTML5 standards and a good modern UI framework. For example, Bootstrap is a good modern UI framework. It's not only Bootstrap, you also have a Tailwind CSS. But as I said, if you work with Bootstrap, be aware, is it really an app? Yeah, maybe then it's needed that it looks like an app. Is it more a website? And so a web app that looks like a website, and for the end user, it's more a website, yeah, that do a bit of more templating in the CSS file. So fonts and clear fonts in HTML, be sure that the text is big enough. And use the standard. So if you want to have a website for a product or for a customer with a very non-standard font, with specific made by a designer, you can say that there's a big chance that it's inaccessible. As then you have some customers, but we really wanted that so beautiful. Yeah, maybe it is, but it's very beautiful, but not accessible for a lot of people. And if you choose a style with a standard that looks like this a bit, yeah, then it's also beautiful and even accessible, so the win-win. What also is really important is that color is not the only way for conveying information. How I do it is using an asterisk for each error item, so it's in the error view. Show an exclamation mark when there's danger, and use words as delete and confirm. I mean, not only the color. It is okay to put a red button when danger. It is okay to put a red button for delete and a green button for OK. And yet there are people with color blindness, they can't see it. Other people, for example, with learning disabilities, will just see it more. But if you do it, combine two things. Combine the color with a pictograph and even text. Then you have everything. And if you have the text, be aware of the contrast. So be aware of, for example, if you have the green button, be aware of the color that the word OK should be on the green button, and on the red button for delete, be aware of the color, for example, I say white, for example, and the color contrast with the word delete or cancel. Your website, so following the WCAG standards, should be resizable up to 400%. So the problem with the basic bootstrap and an adjusted menu, as I did, so a horizontal menu and the basic bootstrap template, the menu becomes invisible when you scroll up more than, I think, more than 200%, and it needs to be resizable up to 400% for the standards. So, but my solution is a quick fix. I'm not the best UI designer. I'm not making the most beautiful websites on earth, but I'm making accessible websites. So what I do, I add also the footnaf component and add the footer menu. Then if the menu is invisible, it has all the same things in the footer menu. So then it is accessible. Images are resizable, also what the WCAG described. So use bigger images than what you add in your CSS layout. For example, you want to have an image on the website, you want to have images and under 50 squared. Maybe load it up into the triple, for example, 450 squared. Or you want to have 150 times 300, then do 300 times 450 or even more. So I'm going to demo how you make the perceivable apps in Blazor. So as I showed in the model here, with event, here, yeah, so in the talk, you have the first slide URI alt, but you saw in my application that the event also has an image, but here is there no alt. Okay, as I said, it's not always needed. What I did here in my Blazor application, I have my page, I have my talk list. It is the talk details, Okay, it's in the talk list item. Then I have my event item with my event. And then in my event item, you will see that I have the event.logo URI, and then I have in the alt the event's name, and then the apostrophe logo is logo. So if you see it, here I have my talks. And in the list of talks, then you have a talk with an event. If you go to here, inspect, you will see that this image has the alt text. So this is the alt here, alt. And if you go to that image here in NDC Porto, I give this talk, you will see again I have the alt. And here the alt says just NDC and then the apostrophe logo. So I only have it for the talk in my model, but I have it for my talk and alt and for my event. I can also click on more info. And again, here you will have the image will be the same, will have the alt. So here again, alt. And so in the model, you saw here, I have for the event, I have the alt with just I type the @ then I go again to my model, event.name and the logo, and in my talk list item, I have for the alt, I have my image, my talk with my source is a talk first slide guy, and my talk first slide guy alt. I also talked about the scrolling, so if I go to so that's the reason that here at the bottom you have the same menu. In fact, in the past it wasn't clear if I started the demo, but this is the bottom menu, so if I scroll, okay, we are at 300 and it needs to be 400. Okay, the menu has disappeared. Okay, how do I navigate the website? No worries, I scroll down and I can use my keyboard and I have my menu. And then the error messages I need to show. So for that, I first show you the comments. I go to comments, and I just do the name of my dad, and he knows I can do it, Johan. I just do my own email address for privacy. Oh no, I don't fill this in because I want the errors. So here you see I have at the top, it's not only color, it's also with the artistic, and here at the bottom is even better. Just below the box you see it here with artistic. It can be, I will do a little refactoring. Here at the top the artistic is not needed because you have your bullet point. Here the artistic is really something you want to. So okay. So we can already perceive the content on the website. Now we need to make it operable, as I promised. So the functionality is available for a keyboard. You already saw that I use my keyboard enough. The reason is I forgot my mouse. No, I didn't forget, but I'm afraid I lost the receiver of my mouse, so I need to do everything with my touchpad. And then it's easier to do it with keyboard. So even at this time, I have a temporary disability because I don't love the touchpad and I don't have my mouse. That's an exact example of temporary disability. No, not temporary, Denny, know your lessons. It's a situational disability, it's not temporal. I have no disabilities in my hands. Situational, I lost the plug for my mouse, so I need to do it with my touchpad, and I don't like moving with my touchpad. I'm not trained for that, so I use more the keyboard. So that's the example. So also, again, a good example for situational. Very important that you use your headings for that also. And that you're aware of a good structure of your website, because if you use the wrong headers and the structure of your website isn't clear, it will be even more confusing just for confusing it with your keyboard. Also important for people with screen readers. That is also important for perceivable. Yes, for perceivable or operatable for both. And the forms, you need to use the edit form and the escaper for the edit form for the good structure. Also, then it's a good structure of your forms in your HTML document. And always be aware of the order of components. As you saw, I have my talks with the talk list. The order is very important. Then if you have your headings in the components, or you will see it later. Users have enough time to read and use the content. In Blazor, avoid timers. And I know sometimes timers are needed. Let's imagine working for the airline industry, but even booking airline tickets is always something that's very inaccessible. Or let's having concerts, a website selling tickets for concerts, like a Rammstein concert. Sometimes then you have timers needed because you don't want a lady down the whole day and then just starting up the website in the morning and then in the evening, I'm going to book maybe it's also not needed. But if it's really needed, there should always be an option to extend time. And I have already found some good websites with timers. So you see the time decreasing, but they have the option to extend time, and then I'm more than happy. Or even do the time, you can even do it better. If there is interaction, for example, on the computer, on the keyboard or the mouse, extend automatically. Content does not cause seizures and physical reactions. So people with epilepsy can have damages with strobe lights and light effects. People can also have anxiety if content moving too fast. Anxiety can be there as part of a mental health situation. And if you have flashy content, maybe you need to make a website for a customer for a discotheque. Maybe they want some flashy stuff. Or maybe it's for the entertainment industry. Maybe they also don't want the website looking too boring. I really advise to turn it off by default and provide a warning sentence before turning on. Now here is really a fact between, you have the developer consulting, for example, making an application, and then you have the customer, what the customer wants and needs. Maybe there is, maybe I see some reactions on the faces, you know what it is. I just give the advice to be more accessible, and you can say to your customers, if you really want it that way, then it is inaccessible and even not safe for some people. And then again, you need to think, should a person with epilepsy go to a discotheque? He is allowed, in fact, but with strobe lights. So maybe a website for a discotheque can go a bit more flirting with the edges of that point, but other websites definitely not. Users can easily navigate, find contacts, and determine where they are. For that, just a good basic HTML and even HTML5, and even having breadcrumbs and even breadcrumbs with coloring. It's not in my demo yet, but really helps users to determine where they are. Users can use different input modalities beyond keyboard. Here is a good thing for the Blazor developer, which HTML5 and the webs and the most tools already. For example, one of the modalities is a screen reader. This already does the most things for you. It's only in a very specific situation when you really have a very specific custom control, but very specific, then maybe you need to test it. But if you keep it simple, and even if you use components from component libraries who are well known in the .NET ecosystem, that isn't that hard, honestly. So something easy. But it's important to think about. And if you really have a very custom thing, you need to think about it. It's not because you don't need to do a lot of work, and the normal thing that you don't have to think about it. So I'm going to demo what I did to make it operable. So for the navigation, the headings are really important, as I said. So I go to my components. I have my event item. I have my talk list item with those headings here. Heading H3. So here I have my heading H3. Then I have my talk list. So it should have an H2. And the talk list is into my page talks. So it is heading H1. If you start a new Blazor project, normal, the basic template, and you add a component, so in the pages, here you have your index, H1, and if I add a component here to my pages, so it's just the normal solution, the blank solution, I add Blazor component, and I call the component stuff. The stuff component, because it's stuff to show. Stuff. Who don't want the stuff component in his application? But what you see, it's H3. So if I here in my index, I will add here my stuff component. Stuff. You will see that the headings are not white anymore. So if you work with, and that's something, it can be difficult or you can overlook it if you just starting with basic playing, you are a bit of prototyping, you have your ID, you then think about it, you see a component, okay, I need a title, the title is already included, it's already provided a title, yeah, but the headings are wrong, so it's not accessible. So here, so H1, where is H2? It's not here. So I am even working on another project, and this was the Joe. I have time to show it. Really working on the headers. So, and that's really one of my first products I want to push in the open, into GitHub. I never really have an open project that is used in GitHub, so by users. Not only by, so I have things in GitHub that I use by myself, used by the external community. I always have a bit of a imposter syndrome if it is about showing code in the open and not only on a temporary talk, but completely. And for this, it's DLive. It's also a project. That project is a bit different, and it's in Dutch. There I'm experimenting about how do I show to my neighbors and people close with me where I am at which conferences and in which country. To give a little bit more information, I live in an inclusive living project. So there I am a person just with autism and a normal or a high EQ, how you call it. So a normal till high intellectual functioning. But most of my neighbors, all of them, and most of them, have a learning disability. So that is a mental retardation. So they have difficulties, or most of them have difficulties with reading. And maybe with reading, not with reading, because reading is a city here in the UK, all very difficult. If you are not a native from England, and then you are talking about they have difficulties with reading, and they don't have to be in reading, they have difficulties with reading. Sorry for the word jokes, I hope you like them. So what do I have here? I have
doesn't go down very well in Reading, that joke.
This is, but we are not there yet.
No, you're fine.
Here I have my heading.basic. So here I'm experimenting. So that is not the project in the open, but that thing, so that heading component, I will then be poked into another application. So move to another separate project, and that project will be in GitHub then. So here you can choose with the switch my heading type. And then you can have, for example, here in my talk list. I don't use H1 or H2, I only use my heading with my heading type. And then I really see the structure, what it will be. So here I pass it through. I can choose it here, and even here in my talk list. Then I can say, I can pass it through also. And then in my page of talks, so by example, future, you will see I have my talk list, my title heading will be H1, and my talk heading will be H2. So even when building the project, I already see the structure. And it's also helpful for the developer to be sure. So here, but that's not important at projects right now. It's just showing the heading types. So here you will see, here you just have the page. You will see H1 and H2. Is the concept that I wanted to show. So I'm going back again to my basic project of the talk. I have my forms that I needed to show. I needed to show the forms. Here, so the comment form. Here I use with the edit form. Everything is clear with the validation messages, input access is all very clear. So back to slides. So the application is perceivable, is operable. It also needs to be understandable. Text is easy, readable, and understandable. Use easy language, and try to avoid jargon, or just in fact, avoid jargon. Be descriptive in error messages, so important. How many developers doesn't care about their error messages? Then a customer, and not only a customer with disability, also, for example, a customer who is really new into tech, or is not into tech, but just need the tech to get their stuff done. And then they get an error message, and then they panic. Is it their fault, or is it maybe, it could be better? Content appears and operates in predictable ways. Make good usage of HTML5 headings. And be aware of the wrong headings in the standard Blazor components, as I showed before when I talked about the heading structure. Really, really important. Users are helped to avoid and correct mistakes. Always use the form validation and provide a cancel if you can, also a clear button. Maybe a cancel button is good, but a cancel button and a clear button is even better. Then users can be sure that they are not writing wrong information. But even some forms don't have a cancel button. If you look on the website, at least have a cancel button. So I think I told already too much about the headings. So here you just have my button, so my submit and my reset. And then with the class I did a bit of different coloring. So I put my own name, my example. And I can cancel. So it's cleared. Okay. Back to the slides. So our applications are perceivable, they are operable, they are understandable. What they need to be? They still need to be robust. So the content is compatible with current and future users too. So be aware and use the good HTML methodologies and practices. And here is something difficult. And I know it sounds a bit of a paradox, but most of things in life are in the middle and are not at the edges. So you need to update often, but you don't need to update too often. I know, sounds a bit of strange, but it's really important. So I think I'm not going to walking over everything again because I only have 5 minutes anymore, and I want to have some time for Q&A. So I want to wrap up with saying I talked about what is accessibility and inclusion. I'll talk about some cases of people with disabilities. I give explanation about the Microsoft tools, so the Microsoft Accessibility Insights and the Microsoft Inclusive Guidelines. I talked about the WCAG, about Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And then I take those 4 parts and implemented it into a Blazor application. So it's time for you right now.